fires raging now in Ukraine's southern port city of Odessa. Almost every district is on fire right now after a brutal Russian drone attack. Russia also hitting Zaporizhia tonight, fires engulfing residential buildings, shopping centers, and stores. Russia and Ukraine, the war continues, despite the agreement to a limited ceasefire and a phone call with President Trump that Putin had agreed to. Ukraine hitting back, striking a Russian military airfield in the past 24 hours. That incredible explosion caught on camera. Many of Russia's long-range strategic bombers were housed there. The blast also wrecking a nearby hospital in Russia. Comes as Putin tonight is giving Ukrainians in occupied territories an ultimatum. Take a Russian passport or get out, saying they have until September 10th, making it clear where he sees these peace talks going: annexation. Next round of peace talks is on Monday. And out front now, Vladimir Milov. He is a former deputy minister of energy in Russia, served under Vladimir Putin before resigning. And Vladimir, I really appreciate your time. I mean, you know Putin. There are so few who truly do, who have worked with him in any sort of a setting. You worked for him. You saw him up close. So at this moment, when you see Putin in his public appearances, you see his body language, his facial expressions, you hear the readouts from Trump on what he says Putin is saying. What do you actually see?
Hello, great to be with you again. And I think it's very clear that Putin is more self-confident and more brazen than ever. He's been really emboldened by this past couple of months of Donald Trump's presidency because there's been a new factor which did not exist before, a very serious pressure on Ukraine so that Ukraine accepts some of his demands. This is a totally new factor. Putin obviously is very happy to hear all this happening. And if you just listen to what Russian officials are saying, including Putin himself, they are elevating their demands. They are putting forward new demands which did not exist before, starting from transfer of control of territories of Ukraine, which they failed to occupy militarily, to control over nuclear power facilities or the port of Odessa, to essentially NATO troops moving beyond the 1990 perimeter. So by this brazen rhetoric, you see that Trump's arrival at the White House brought Putin to a new level of self-confidence.
I mean, it's pretty stunning the way you describe it. I mean, do you think Putin has any trepidation or any uncertainty or feels any pressure from Trump, or literally he has perceived it as full steam ahead?
Putin is a very, very experienced guy. He's been in power in a very difficult quarter of a century. He saw this permanent rotation of American and Western leaders. Sorry to say, he knows how to cook them. He's seen this movie before many times. Basically, he arrived in power as a skilled KGB officer who was specialized in recruitment, of saying to people what they exactly want to hear to achieve his goals. So he can play Trump. I'm pretty sure that he's extremely confident and that this is exactly what he's doing right now.
It's interesting the way you use the word cooked. So one of Trump's principal negotiators is a man named Steve Witkoff, as you know. He just met with Putin. And so he was asked if Russia kept its word not to attack Ukraine's energy infrastructure, even though obviously they did that. But they were playing with rhetoric. And here's what Witkoff said.
I tend to believe that President Putin is operating in good faith. He said that he was going to be operating in good faith to the president yesterday, and I take him at his word.
So when you hear a U.S. official say of Putin, he's operating in good faith, I take him at his word, what would you say to Mr. Witkoff?
Putin has a very, very, very long track record of, keeping or not keeping his various international commitments. I mean, any kind of agreements from climate change to WTO and international trade, to human rights conventions, to arms control, what have you. He always walked away from any of his commitments and never kept his word whenever he felt like it. So he has long proven track record. I can show, if Mr. Witkoff is not familiar with that, I can basically show you like a thick volume of commitments that Putin has violated, including internationally ratified legal agreements, still nominally valid today, which Putin simply walked away from. So much for his very valuable word. I think, listen, I'm in international politics for quite some time already. I have never seen anybody who really speaks out in public some confident and delicate details of a very difficult negotiations the way Mr. Witkoff does. This is something really very unusual, because usually in complicated negotiations and talks like that, you keep details hidden until you reach certain agreement. Now, this gentleman is out there talking some sensitive issues and details. I think really this kind of negotiator is truly a gift for Putin.
Truly a gift for Putin. Well, all right, Vladimir, thank you very much. We all appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The U.S. will try to take its push for a ceasefire to the next level on Monday. Russia and Ukraine have agreed to stop attacking each other's energy facilities. Now, U.S. and Russian officials are set to meet in Saudi Arabia to iron out more specific language. They're also said to be hoping to reach an achievement ending attacks on naval assets in the Black Sea. Now, the U.S. and Ukraine are expected to hold separate meetings at the same time. All right, for more analysis, we're joined by John Loft, the head of the foreign policy at the New Eurasian Strategy Center, and he's speaking to us from London. Thank you so much for being here with us. So let me start with that meeting in Saudi Arabia. Do we know what we're expecting to come out of that? Are the expectations pretty low?
Yeah, I think the expectations are pretty low. This is going to be, in my view, a long, slow process to try to achieve some progress and work out a way in to simply persuade both the Russians and the Ukrainians that there is a genuine path to peace. At the moment, both sides see a motivation to fight, and it's pretty clear from the meeting that, or the telephone call that President Trump had with President Putin earlier this week, that the Russians are playing really quite hard to get. And the results of that call were pretty minimal. So the US negotiators are going to see what they can get from the Russians. But I think the difficulty here is that President Trump is in a hurry and President Putin is not. Putin can carry on fighting for a good while yet. And the two sides are talking. The Russians are keen to restore relations with the US. There are lots of things going on there. But as far as the war is concerned, the Ukrainians are not at the table. And I think this is the big problem, that there are things being decided over their heads. There are European countries that are also very unhappy about this process and where it is leading.
Yeah, you described this as sort of this long process. In a piece, you described Putin as ready to dance a long, slow tango with Trump. So your position basically is Putin is basically stringing Trump along, and this 30-day ceasefire on energy infrastructure, is that just an example, do you think?
Well, I think it is an example because President Trump was able to persuade President Zelensky to sign up to an unconditional 30-day ceasefire in the expectation that the Russians, probably as a gesture of goodwill or something of that kind, would be prepared to do the same. But what President Trump has discovered is that the Russians have other motivations. They believe that they can win this war. And I think the real concern is in Ukraine is that the Russians are trying to use President Trump to impose on them a Russian-designed peace settlement. Because the Russians are just not interested in simply a ceasefire. They've said this consistently. They want a peace settlement. And the terms of that peace settlement go far beyond Ukraine. They concern NATO, the presence, I believe, of the United States, military presence of the United States in Europe, and of course the ultimate conditions for Ukraine in terms of its future existence, because the Russians want to make sure that Ukraine doesn't join any military alliances, namely NATO. They want to ensure that when there is a peace agreement, that there'll be no foreign forces on Ukrainian territory. And finally, they want to be sure that the Ukrainians are going to, in fact, as they would put it, demilitarize. They want Ukraine to be in a position where it can't properly defend itself. And then last but not least, apart from the increased territory that they would occupy and incorporate into the Russian Federation, Putin wants to have all four regions. He's indicated four regions. They only partially occupy three of those at the moment. He wants to have all those incorporated into the Russian Federation, and he would no doubt want to get recognition of the incorporation of Crimea. In addition to that, they would like to bring to power in Ukraine a government that is, in their view, friendly towards Russia.